Welcome to Learning with Lerner, where we embark on a transformative journey of knowledge and personal growth. I'm Lindsay Lerner, your dedicated host and guide as we delve into the depths of unconventional wisdom. Together, we'll explore the stories and insights of remarkable trailblazers who have forged their own paths. Brace yourselves for thought-provoking conversations, profound insights, and eye-opening experiences. Our mission is to challenge the norm, ignite curiosity, and empower you to embrace your unique journey. This is Learning with Lerner. Welcome to this week's episode of Learning with Lerner, where we are celebrating folks that are changing the game and making a positive impact in their communities. Today, get ready to be inspired by the amazing story of Tim Grae, a master massage therapist and founder of Grae Wellness. Hailing from Harlem, Tim's goal is to bring health and wellness to his community. He's been on this mission for over 20 years, using his expertise in massage therapy and personal training to help people achieve optimal health. In 2013, Tim founded Grae Wellness to show the world that massage therapy is more than just a spa treatment. It can truly heal the body and transform lives. Grae Wellness is not your average wellness company. They're open 24/7, making sure that their clients get the care that they need whenever they need it. Their wellness lounge is a space for the community to gather, learn, and evolve. Grae Wellness has connected wellness practitioners from all cultural and professional backgrounds, creating a unique definition of community healing. As a Black-owned business, Grae Wellness focuses on modern and indigenous modalities from both Eastern and Western medicine. Tim is committed to education and representation when teaching people how to take care of their mind, body, and spirit. He's proud to help others recover, restore, and rejuvenate. And he's creating a home for the next generation of healers. In this episode, we'll dive into Tim's journey and hear about his vision for Grae Wellness. We'll also discuss the importance of representation in the wellness industry and how Grae Wellness is making a difference in the community. Get ready to be energized, inspired, and empowered by Tim Grae's story on Learning with Lerner. As always, listeners, thank you so much for listening. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed, rated, and reviewed the podcast. It really does help. Tim, thank you so much for making the time to be here. Can you tell us a bit about where you grew up and what that was like?
I like to use this old joke to say I grew up in Harlem before it was pretty, but it was full of culture, community, and exposure. So growing up in, being born in the 70s, raised in the 80s and 90s, you got to see the good, bad, and indifferent of New York City. Fred Taylor says exposure leads to expansion.
Sure.
So you either become a product of the environment or you become a product because of the environment. The cool thing is that I really had a great childhood. I mean, we all, one of the things I give my mom credit for is that the things that I did not know, that I wasn't supposed to know, I wasn't really aware of.
I was just going to say, which one was for you?
When you live in an environment when everybody's pretty much shopping at the same store, doing the same thing, you don't really know anything until you leave that environment. And I'll never forget the culture shock that I got when I left my neighborhood one day. I was going to martial arts school. My godfather got me a subscription to Richard Chung's Taekwondo studio. I want to say I was around 11 or 12. And I was able to take the buses when you just randomly put your children on buses and expected them to get there without any cell phone and anything. You just better get there. You better get back. That was usually the term.
Sure.
And I get to 86th Street and Lexington Avenue. And it was just a different world when you're on the Upper East Side. And the tone of the energy was different. So being not even recognizing that I was the only Black kid in the class, because I didn't care because we all just like martial arts. Thank God for, all the Saturday afternoon martial arts films. But then I started to recognize that their parents picking them up was a thing. My mother couldn't come pick me up because she had to work. So like these small little things, it wasn't like big moments. It didn't have a big racial disparity moment. It was just the small things that you just realized that you didn't have access to. Like we couldn't go to like the store after class to get a pizza. That was a reward. That was something significant. Going to McDonald's was like, going to the Ritz-Carlton. So it was these small little things you start to recognize that there was a different exposure in the world. My first exposure to movement was breakdancing. So, of course, growing up in New York City, that exposure to 1980s hip hop, it was an underground phenomenon. And the principles of hip hop were graffiti writing, MCing, DJ, b-boying. So I couldn't graffiti write because if I'd have left my house in the middle of the night to go bomb a train, my mother would have killed me. There's no greater fear than your mom. Two, I couldn't rap. And I damn sure didn't have any equipment to be a DJ. But I could dance.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
And shout out to my mother. May God be pleased with her. She hired the best breakdancer in my neighborhood, this guy named Grae. She hired Greg to come to my house to teach me. Like, I'm just realizing the investment my mother made in me just to see if I wanted to try something. This is the reason why mothers are absurdly amazing. Dads be like, nah, I got no money for that. Mom's like, you want to try it? You know. So she gave him $10. I want you to understand, $10 in 1987. That's like $100. She gave him $10, and we were in my living room and for hours and times. So that was my introduction to movement. And then Bruce Lee. And martial arts became, everybody thought they were Asian in my neighborhood. If you've never seen Kung Fu Theater, which used to come on Saturdays at 3 p.m. on Channel 5, they used to play all of the martial arts films from China. And from 3 to 5, not one soul in any neighborhood in probably the Northeast region was outside. Every single one of us were in the house watching Kung Fu Theater. That was my intro. Like big dancing, martial arts, gymnastics, all of those things were the time that was happening culturally.
And then when did you get more involved in the nightlife scene? If you were so afraid of your mom, how did that play out?
That's fair. That's a fair question. So my mother is a hustler. My mother was an entrepreneur. Okay. So my mother was a couture women's designer. So that freedom and expression was in the home, you know? So my first party I threw with a friend of mine her name is Shawana Clark, still friends to this day. And I'm like, okay, what do we want to do? She goes, we have a friend in the building whose mother is willing to give us the apartment to throw a party. I'm like, you're lying. She's like, I am not lying. I said, okay, sure. Sir, okay, so what are we doing? She goes, she's going to give us the house. I said, so what's the deal? She says, we just have to give mom a portion of the proceeds from the door. I was like, okay, I'm in. We lived in the same building, by the way. So it was easy. We threw this party. We were in high school. It was such a success that I had to stand outside of the door because some of the more unmentionable people from the neighborhood started to show up. We had to split half the money with her mom, which I was like, let's like act like we didn't make as much money as we did, so we ain't gotta give up half of this money. But that was the itch. That was the itch. And we had such a beautiful party. And her mom was like, you guys took care of it. You guys did a really good job. Mind you, she was there. I want to be very clear about that. She was still not leaving her house with these kids.
She's a smart lady.
Listen, that was my introduction to realize if I control the door, girls would like me more.
Fair. That's very fair. Mm-hmm. And is that at that point, or at which point did your DJing skills enter the picture?
Never. My DJing skills didn't start until probably a decade ago, maybe a little bit longer. But my friend Cameron was throwing a house party, and I went to his house, and he had the DJ set up like in front of a brick wall, which I thought aesthetically just looked really cool. I had no idea that Cameron could DJ. We've known each other for years. I had no idea. And he's a former B-boy from the Bay Area, so we knew each other through dance community. You know, being in clubs and stuff like that, we were those guys who were in the circle. So I see the setup. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And, you know, everybody does this stupid thing. By the way, if you see this in someone's house, don't do it. Everybody has this jigga moment when you just want to touch the turntables. And, of course, I got sucked into it. And Cam goes, let's play. I'm sorry? What do you mean, let's play? So for the latter part of the party, I was playing records, trying to figure out how all of this mechanism works to make it sound seamless. It is not easy. And that was kind of like my intro. But the beautiful thing about that, I'll say this for your audience and anyone, when you give people opportunity to explore and wonder, and you give them a little bit of support, you'd be surprised what can come of that, what they take from that. And for weekends, I would go to Cameron's house and he would just let me play on the computer and the music. And I still have that was stupid. I still have this stupid mix that I will never let the world ever hear of the first time I ever recorded it. But that was the intro, but that has led me to be able to DJ literally around the world.
Totally.
From that option of a friend stoking the fire.
Well, that's what your mom did for you too.
That's what I'm saying. People are amazing. And that's what you do.
But I think that's what's so magical. And I think that's what the world needs more of, is being able to have those spaces. Because I notice it with people are so willing to do that in most cases with kids. Like you said, with your mom. Oh, you're interested in that. Well, why don't you explore that? And now as adults, it's no, but you're supposed to be, but and you're supposed to be doing, but you're just and it's like, what? Why?
Yeah. Yeah. We were supposed to be finished products by the time we get out into the world. We're never, we're not supposed to dream anymore, try anything. And that's where I think that older generations get stuck in careers.
Totally.
And that's the only reason why they're there for 30 years. You get your gold pen at retirement.
Your plaque.
And the plaque, the watch, you know what I mean? He's never missed a day of work. Mind you, you never enjoyed your days off because you were there every day. But we stopped dreaming a lot because of what we think we're supposed to be doing.
I know you've done a lot of traveling and performing. What led you down that path? What was that for?
So I was a guy, thank God for the 90s, because that's when the height of R&B music was a thing. So I was in a singing group in that same building where I threw that party. And that was our way of staying out of trouble, because we all got influenced by New Edition. Every single person. That is the best thing to ever come out of Boston. Everything else out of Boston.
I wholeheartedly agree with
that. So ever since the Candy Girl album, I was probably 9. I don't even remember when it came out, but I was young enough to realize that I had no money. And I think my sister bought it, I believe. And listening to that, you just saw people who looked like yourself. So the songs that I can remember was Candy Girl, oh my word. And I was like, oh, I could do that. And because of your voice hasn't dropped yet, of course you can sing in those keys. It was 2 songs that I used to sing a lot. Candy Girl was number 1. Second one was called Pasta Dutchie. And it was a group of West Indian kids from Jamaica. And the hook goes, past the Dutchie upon the left-hand side. And I used to sing it, have no idea what a Dutchie was. All of these things, I was like, moments. I'm like, okay, whatever. But that started, my mom was like, sing. So my mother could sing. My mother's boyfriend was a doo-wop singer. So this music was just in the house. So that led to me not knowing that I could sing. And then my friends just wanted to start a singing group. I was like, bet. So when New Edition's second album, the Heartbreak album, where the Can You Stand the Rain song comes on, I had the lowest register. So they was like, I think every human being does this, whatever group there is. You start picking out the person who you feel you most resonate with. And for me, it was Johnny Gill. And I was like, well, Tim, everybody wanted to be Rob Tresvant because he was the lead singer. I wanted to be the power vocal guy who you didn't see, who was slightly unassuming, but had all this talent. And that's where it started. That kept me out of the street. Not the streets in a negative sense, but, we come from an era where you had either an ability with sports or you were, you had to pick a way to survive. Growing out of it wasn't even a visual mental option. You just thought you were going to be there. You just wanted to be the top of the food chain where you were, not realizing there was so much world. But that helped me, again, tour the world. It brought me to Australia. I lived in Japan because I was singing. All these things that, again, the attribute does not come to me. The attribute goes to my mom, because she just allowed me to wonder. and protected me on the back end of me not knowing how many dangers that there were.
How did you go from you're
I know it's
you're
a lot.
singing
I'm
around the
sorry.
world, which is
Yeah.
fantastic, and then you land, I think, back in New York, and you start the Sweat Party?
Oh yeah, Lord.
Which seems like a culmination of all the things.
You know what? It's starting to make sense now that you're talking about it. So thank you for your guidance. I appreciate you training me. So the Sweat Party, I started because back to the movie thing that you won't know anything about. I want you to see that there's a recurring theme here. You know this movie. Everyone saw The Matrix. Now, I think this was Matrix 2. There's a particular scene in the movie where Morpheus, a.k.a. Lawrence Fishburne, is saying, let them hear you roar. And they're like in this subterranean area. And everyone is in like the Kanye West clothing line, loincloth type of thing. And he said, let them hear you roar. And out of nowhere, this is the scene in the film, you start hearing these house beats, like drumming and stuff like that. And it's slow and it looks like it's a summer night. And everybody's just sexy, hot, and completely androgynous. And I'm like, I want to be at that party. That's the only thing. I was like, yo, that looks like a hell of a good time. Like, we're okay. Slightly slantingly clad women who look like they have beautiful dewy mist. I'm good. It smells like patchouli. It's great. I watched this film and then the light bulb goes off. And I called a friend of mine, DJ CEO, and I said, I got it. I'm on the bus. Okay. Which no one should ever do that. I'm on the bus in New York City. And I said, I got it. He goes, you got what? I said, the name of the party we're going to throw. And he's like, what? I said, it's going to be called the Sweat Party. Because there was a scene with his brother with locks. He's jumping in the air and he whips his hair. And his locks flow like a perfect stream. And it's like sweat comes off the end of the locks. And everybody's just like, yeah. And if you're not a house head or a party kid, you don't know what that feeling is like to dance to Euphoria where you're sweating your clothes out.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a
I've got chills.
Euphoric feeling. Yes. See, that was a feeling. That was a feeling. That was a feeling. So I called him and he goes, and this was in his perfect tone. He goes, Tim, ain't no black people going to a party that says it's called Sweat Party, man. That just sounds nasty, bro. That just sounds like some undercover. I said, well, what makes you think that this party is for black people? And that was just me being my snappy self. Don't dream kill me. And I said, that's it. Because I used to be a part of one of the longest running old school hip hop parties in New York City history called the Freedom Party. It's just every Friday for like 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. So that being said, I threw the first party on December 26, 13, 14 years ago. And I told everybody, if you come, don't wear clothes you got to be cute in. There won't be any sitting here. And to this day, the DJs that were there were DJ CEO, who just DJ for Usher in Vegas for his residency, DJ Hard Hitting Harry, who was the Fugees DJ, who's still rocking to this day. And lastly, it's a brother by the name of DJ MoMA, who created a party that is a staple now nationwide called Everyday People. So we threw that party and we are the first group of people. If you ever see a DJ inside of a fitness class, they got it from me. So when you see a DJ in that fitness class and you jumping up and that music is there, it's because it was some weird dudes who was on a bus seeing The Matrix and said, people need to dance and have a good time, because I don't drink,
Totally.
right? I don't drink, I don't smoke, but that dance floor, that energy is such a transformable experience, specifically if you're going through anything. So it's a healing. And traditionally, when we think about healing in music, it's been happening with different demographics of people for literal ever. You know, the first instrument in the world is your voice. The second instrument is the drum. And there's a drum in every culture. Every culture, there's a drum. And that's how the Sweat Party came about.
And what was it about those parties and those gatherings that then led you to now what is Grae Wellness?
When the party started going, I can't just sit still on anything. I need to always find something else to do. Creative ADD. And I started throwing fitness and dance parts before the party started. So if the party was from 10 to 4, from 10 to 11, we had a dance portion where I had dance instructors teaching, and then I had a fitness portion. So you can, for that 1 hour, so it's 30 minutes of dance, 30 minutes of fitness. And it was kind of like priming you to do something. And it was like a gateway for people who didn't train or people who are afraid to dance. You know what I mean? So if you feel socially awkward, but like, I don't know how to act when I'm in this crowd of people, let me give you just a little bit in the beginning and see. And then I had friends who were choreographers from the dance community, and I would have them teach. Or people I knew from the fitness community because I worked at Equinox and stuff like that. So I was like, yo, you want to teach a class? And the wellness component I started making it reward driven. So I gave pedometers out at the beginning of it. And whoever had the most steps taken by like 1 a.m, we gave you a prize.
Incredible.
So people would put it on and totally forget that they're they're just dancing to their favorite songs. The energy is right. And to this day, I think that my friend Anthony Cantonier, who's a full administrator and a teacher, he probably would not want me to say this because his students will probably find out. I think that he's probably had the largest amount of steps taken in one party. And he did almost 40,000 steps.
That's a lot of moving.
That's a lot of moving. If you think of 10,000 in a day, he did 40,000 in 4 hours.
Damn, good for him.
That's how much dancing he was doing.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, I could be wrong on the number, but it was definitely clearly like 30, 40. But that's kind of where the health and wellness part came in. And then we started adding other features. Like I had people getting blood pressure screenings. So because the most affected demographic of people with high blood pressure or hypertension are African Americans. For the historical aspect of it, I inherited it from my dad. So when I knew that my father was very casual with it, I was like, oh, come on. And being a massage therapist for the last 15 years, I'm like, how can I do things that actually help people heal? So the sweat party was a way to give people their vegetables while thinking that they were eating their candy.
When did you get interested in massage therapy?
All right, this is going to sound like a recurring theme, but it's true. It was a movie. I'm not joking. I wish I could make this up. It's so true.
I think I need to start watching movies.
Film, TVs and film raised my generation. Okay, because there was nobody home. So if you weren't outside playing, you were watching television or something like that. That's why all of my kids from my generation can sing every theme song for every TV show. So anyway, there was a film that I forget the name of, but there was a guy trying to hit on an older woman on a beach. All right. And this is the Skinamax days, guys. So just give you a little prequel. I'm a young, virile 17-year-old kid. And he tries to hit on a girl, and the woman goes, so what do you do for a living? And he wasn't expecting that question. And by this time, I probably changed the story 90 times because of the way I remember it. But he said, I'm a massage therapist. And she said, oh, so you know how to touch a woman. And I was like, what? So that's pretty much what happened. And I went to my friend Joy's house because she was the only person I knew who had a computer and a printer. And she printed my first business card that day. And it said, Hands of Joy Massage. Mm-hmm. And to be even more fancy, to lean into the Tim narrative, her name was spelled Joi. Right? So, Black people are very creative with the spelling of your children's names. So, I kid you not, it's true. So when people would get the card, it would read into their brain, Hands of Schwab.
That's even better.
So I just ran with it. And because it made me sound more fancy. And we always wanted to have something to authenticate us. And I only liked older women.
And at what point did someone tell you you might want to take a class or two for that?
Remember that mother of mine that I mentioned? Yeah. Patricia was washing my laundry one day and found one of my business cards inside of my pants. And when she did, Timothy, what is this? I said, oh, I said it so casually, like it wasn't a thing. I said, it's my business card. What do you mean? I'm like, hey, I'm doing my thing. And she said, baby, that's a real profession. I'm like, a real what? What do you mean? Because all of this history of martial arts, I understand the body. As an athlete, a football player, baseball player, I'm like, I understand how the body moves. So, and of course, I watched it on Kung Fu flicks. So, of course, I can touch somebody and heal them. That's what they do in the Kung Fu movies. And she goes, no, baby, that's a real thing. And at that moment, it was like, I've never seen one. So, how do I know it's real? So, I was like, oh. And I kind of put it down until years later when I went to massage school because I forgot how I ended up at the Swedish Institute. And that never left. So that was 18-year-old me. And I think I went back to school at like 26. And I had to like take a test to get in because they didn't think that it was like, well, your academic history from your high school years weren't that good. I'm like, I went to an inner city high school. Nobody's grades were that good. Let's be very clear. And I said, I'm a functioning human being. I'm an adult now. And I had a kid. So, my son was 4 years old by that point. And so I'm like, I need to do something because the rest of this was just boring. And I always had an interest in it. And started, and then I had the opportunity to go sing in Japan. And I was like, oh, I'll get back to school. And I lived in Japan for a little while. And I got reintroduced to something called shiatsu massage while in Japan. Here's a little FYI. Lindsay, never do what I'm about to say. When you have 4 herniated discs from playing sports, as I did at that time when I got on a plane to go to Japan, never fly in a pressurized tube that's 7 miles in the air because that's things to compress the body. So when your herniated discs are already compressed, altitude has a tendency to make it worse. I got off the plane in Japan, laid down on a bed that is about yay thick. Because at that time, I'm 225 pounds of muscle-ish. It was a lot of adipose tissue there as well. But they had to take me to a shiatsu therapist.
Wow.
Because I could barely walk. Because my back was just
and you need to be able to do that in order to dance, I would assume.
And sing. Got a massage from this woman. Started getting reintroduced to it, onsens and all these forms of therapies that's been around in Japan forever, hot springs and all these things that seemed like a luxury perspective was a normal form of treatment there. Eating better, all these things were like, what? How is this salad going to help me with this back pain? Well, because they would limit your inflammation, sir. So that flame that you feel would be doused. And I'm hearing the Eastern terminology rather than the Western. And that's what made me really, really have an understanding about how the whole system works. You can't just do one thing. It's a whole entire system that we have to respect. So that really, moving to Japan really helped me see a perspective about life and living. It's the difference of being just alive.
And so eventually you end up back in New York. Is that when you started Grae Wellness?
Right after it, actually. Was throwing parties again. Got challenged. So the bigger promoters in New York City at that time had all the big clubs. So I had to figure out a way to get in. Not saying that I knew every way, but had a partner, my friend Jason, who was a massage therapist. So I could use my form of conversation. And I convinced promoters to allow me to do massage at their parties in the beginning. And they were like, why? And here's the truth. I said, the pretty girls don't want to pay. So they're going to come early because it's free. What are you doing to keep the pretty girls occupied because they ain't got no money to spend because they're waiting for the big baller guys because this is the crowd that they had. Okay, so they had the people who had affluence and money. And they was like, what do you mean? I said, you give us $150 a night. We'll bring the massage chairs, set up a whole area, make it a whole thing. And the rule I said was, if I can get a girl to take her shoes off, she ain't going nowhere. I don't care preference. I don't care what your history is. If a woman takes off her shoes, she's comfortable and she's chilling. So the first rule was when you sat down in a massage chair that you had to kick off your shoes. When they kick off them shoes because they've been standing in them trying to be cute. We're talking about 2000s, okay? So everybody was in a skimpy outfit and high heels and possibly like a choker chain or something. And we started collecting every cute girl's email. and started adding it to our email list. So when we threw our parties, we would email those same girls. And at that time, I did not have a massage license, but I understood touch. So, true story, this young woman asked Jason, mind you, my partner Jason is 6'6". You can't miss him. And the most wasted talent in the world because he hates sports. So he held all that length for no reason. Anyway, she goes, "You guys are in here just trying to touch on girls." And he's like, "What?" He goes, "Why?" He goes, "You guys are in here just trying to feel up on girls. You know, they're not really professionals." And Jason goes in his wallet and takes out his actual massage therapy ID card with his license number on it. And goes, and I realized at that moment, she had never seen a Black massage therapist before. So why would she think that this is real? It's not a part of her normal. And I was as uneducated before when my mom told me. And at that moment, I felt like a fraud. And I'm like, no. So the next day, I went back to the Swedish Institute. Jason said, "Go check it out, see what it is now, and maybe you can start." I have a problem about being not real. And I signed up that day and I went to school for 32 straight months every night after work in between our parties. It took me 2.5 years to graduate because I was only going part-time. If you're going full-time, you have 16 months straight. But if you have a full-time job and you go to massage school full-time, your first 3 semesters, you're in medical school. People do not realize that. Brain was fried. And I was a personal and business banker for Citibank during the day. So I went to work, went to school, and was throwing parties at night.
Did you sleep?
No. And these are the days before real big social media. This is still MySpace era. You know, so you had to be outside for people to know who you were because you had to be on the scene. So I would be in a full suit during the day, go change into, like sweatpants and my school uniform for school. And then I get my fly guy outfit on for the night. I did that for years.
But out of all of this comes Grae Wellness.
Yeah. And as of yesterday, we in our 808 studio with the massage, where we do the massage acupuncture, we just started our 7th year in that location. And the wellness lounge, now we're going into our 4th year with that location. And then November, in the building that we are in 5th Avenue, we'll be there for 1 decade.
Which is phenomenal.
By God's mercy. This is not me. This is because of my mother. I give her the accolade of allowing this kid to dream and have option and never see something that you can't try, led to me literally helping tens of thousands of people over the last 15 years.
Right. And what was your vision then, and how has it expanded until now?
Well, the vision at that particular point was I had never seen one of me doing that and having their own place, because usually we're in a job situation where I got hired at Equinox as a massage therapist before I even graduated. The boss at that time liked me so much and knew that he did not know I had all this professional background. And he just looked at me as some kid who was in massage school. And then he looked at my resume and was like, "Hold on, you've been managers at such and such and such and such." I was like, "Yeah." So he saw me that was a moment. And I'm like, okay. By the time I left Equinox, I didn't want to be in a spa anymore because there was no actual healing. There's a lot of service, but there's no healing. I was dating someone at that time who we went to the Philippines. And this is right when the typhoon hit Haiyan. So she's Filipino. We raised money and we took $1,000 to the Philippines to give it away to the people on the line. Right. And it was very personal to her. And Equinox said I couldn't leave. Because Equinox, if anyone who works at Equinox during blackout season, which is the last week of the year, right before Christmas, you do not leave because that's when we make all the sales. But I was so good at my job, as I was a manager by this point at Equinox, that I didn't even have to worry about if we were going to hit our numbers or not. Because we were already hit our actual sales goals by like the 20th day. I asked my manager at the time, "Hey, can I go do this for this humanitarian, save the life, be with my partner? This is the person I want to marry, yada, yada, yada." He goes, "Yeah." He leaves. Gets another promotion. The new guy comes in, did not know that conversation was happening. By the time I get back, they were like, well, Tim, we're thinking about letting you go because you own the sweat party, which is now in a conflict of your managerial contract. I was like, you mean the same people? Y'all want to fire me when all of your managers are at that same party? You sure you want to do that? And I knew I didn't want to do it anymore. And my partner, that same person, who we're still cool to this day, finds a space at my current building on Craigslist. It can be good for certain things, people. It can be good for certain things. From a guy named Robert who was subleasing 2 days, a Tuesday and a Sunday in his studio. I go by there November 16th, 10 years ago, 2013, and see the space, convince him, because he's an older massage therapist. So I come in with the cool looking outfit, and I can look like I'd be one of the kids that mess up your house. You know what I mean? Like, I might be having people running in and out. So I think he was looking for someone who's a little bit more older and more respectable looking. But I convinced him throughout what I did that I'm just trying to transition into my own. And 2014, Equinox said, Tim, we don't want you anymore. Same day I opened Grae Wellness.
I love it. Were there any specific challenges being a Black business owner, specifically? Well, that's a question, but more specifically, a Black business owner in the wellness industry, to what you just alluded to?
The biggest challenge about it all is that the first person up the hill takes the shrapnel. So when you don't see a representation of yourself, you have to be everything on the idea. Unfortunately, you also carry the idea of other people's expectations about what that's supposed to look like. So since I was one of the first ones up the hill, I was never the first massage therapist that was Black. I know I'm the only one from my neighborhood who's ever done it. I know I'm the only one who's ever owned a space on Fifth Avenue who's ever done it. So there was no blueprint that I could follow. So I just tried to reimagine the business as not a Black-owned business, but just a business of health and wellness. Because seeing me physically is going to take care of itself. The other part became the most important is, am I good? I've never functioned through the world as a person of color in general. Am I good at what I do? I just so happen to be blessed to have all this extra melanin. That's God's mercy. So having that as an option was a hard task because I didn't understand the business, and people support and help people that they either like or have some type of association to. So I didn't have either one of those things. So there was a lot to learn about taxes and filings and business organization, and something as simple as, where am I getting my sheets from? Because when I started, I was washing my sheets every day. I'm going to the Targets. Oh no, the Burlington Coat Factory sheet section, I robbed them when I first started because I did not know that there was a company that you can just get, a facilities company, to actually provide you with sheets. Like something like that, such a small thing goes so far. So not seeing many people like me was one, but the other people that were established therapists did not willingly share information for whatever their reasons were. Fortunately, that sense of resilience of when I grew up also makes me go, you're not the only person I can talk to. So that helped a lot, but it's still a challenge. Here it is a decade later, and I try to make sure that I'm an advocate for people to do this type of work, that it's a career choice. It's an indigenous medicine, so it's been around. It's the oldest form of healthcare in the history of mankind. So if we think about the history of mankind, we can always trace those things back to Africa, then Southeast Asian countries, and so forth. So making people see that they're an association to it already helps them accept it. So I still face those same type of challenges, just on a greater scale, because what we're going to now is to take from the studio where we have, by God's mercy, we've been there a decade. But that remember I said, I have creative ADD. It's not enough. So the goal now is, how do we help more people on more of an expansive level, because people are much more receptive to what wellness is, although it's a very ominous word that can mean so many things. So, the history of the word actually came from a white man in the 70s to make health more inclusive, When I tell people that, they're like, what? I was like, yeah. So the racial divide even was happening then, to the fact that a word had to be created to help people know that we need to be included. Thank God for him. So we're going to create, because none of the things I do is me. We're creating the first wellness and health preventative hospital. And the name of the goal at this point is the Grae Wellness Institute for Preventative Health. So it's going to not just be me. I'm just going to have an Avengers version of a building. So in my head, it looks like the X-Men building. And I'll be Professor X because I'm bald. And then I have people like you who are like Storm and Phoenix and Wolverine and all these amazing abilities. I'm so serious when I see this in my head. So, I mean, having those things as classes and teachings and stuff like that, all these things are forms of therapy. So being in a room with you, when we hear sound healing, people gravitate toward these things that don't even know what it is or why it is. So imagine, before you go into this class, if you're a member, mind you, this membership associationship would be based upon your income as a person. I want to make sure that where I come from and places that you come from and your peoples come from, that it's accessible. So how am I helping people who grew up in the projects like I did, or that kid from a low income area that just didn't have access, whatever. But imagine going into a class, before the class starts, we teach you the premise of why sound is important. So what 457 megahertz means to the spirit. And not this theoretical thing, because we can get very theoretical and very out there, and people can get away with a lot because there's no standing base of where it actually means. I want people to walk away with comprehension. That's what I'm getting at. And then you get to network with other people looking for themselves. And that's community.
Obviously you're speaking this into existence now. Is this the future that you see for this wellness industry? And is that your hope that you want to contribute to the growth and development of it?
Yes. Yes. Fortunately, by God's mercy, historically, this wouldn't be the first. Historically, Muslims in the Middle East have been having institutions for health and wellness for 1,300 years. I just learned this stuff. I mean, it doesn't hurt that I'm Muslim, but learning this history about health and wellness and things like wet cupping, it's called hijama, which is based in Islam. Or when you learn the history about where yoga actually derives from, so it's not just an African thing, but these third world country healings are so socially popular, but the popularity doesn't come from the people that created
right.
it.
Oh, totally. Totally.
So I'm like, how about we not get mad at that? Because people are going to do what people are going to do. Humans are going to human, as my friend Carlos likes to say. But we try to give a better platform to the people who actually can get it from the source. Just like, get the actual thing from the source. Don't weaponize where you know it, because some people just do things because they just don't know. So informing them in a language of which they can understand, and making it look like, if you're a yoga guru and your guru doesn't look like an Indian man, who's teaching your teacher? Or if you're interested in ayahuasca, but you don't know any Peruvians.
Truly, truly.
All of this to say, people historically have been looking for a greater sense of self, a sense of God, and a sense of healing. That's the reason why all this plant-based medicine became a thing. People are looking for the euphoria of God.
Sure. Well, I think that's what people get caught up in. It's this big hesitancy and aversion to God. If you swap it out for universe, if you swap it out for spirituality, you swap it out for finding yourself, whatever it is, if you use a different word, that I've discovered in a lot of my conversations, depending on the word choice, depends on the other person's level of comfort.
Oh, hands down.
And that's why I appreciate being able to I think a lot of times people are like, oh, you and your hippie woo-woo and that. And I just think it's so funny, because it's a single word that you could change in a sentence that then you can form a bond with someone. And you can have that baseline.
Look how beautiful that is, though.
Exactly.
And that's the part that makes it all a really nice conversation, because we're not supposed to be alone. Societal. We're not supposed to be individual. We're supposed to. That's the reason why God made us in all of these different versions. It's so we can learn from each other.
For me, growing up, I never had I was raised very, very like conservative Jewish. I went to Hebrew school. I got my bat mitzvah. I did all the things. I went to Israel. I did the things.
By the way, y'all bar mitzvahs be popping.
I'm saying.
I've DJ'd a couple bar mitzvahs, and I'm like, some of these kids, I forget that they are turning into adults at that point. But I'm like, you want your kid to do this? Oh, he's an adult now. Tim, wait, he's 13. I'm not playing Nicki Minaj for a 13-year-old.
I still have my friends from middle school that will talk about my bat mitzvah. It was fantastic.
See, I mean, I give y'all credit for that. We don't have any of that. I mean, that's just dope. You were saying, I'm sorry, that was great.
It's just interesting to think about, because being raised through that lens, but not having, I had a lot of cultural references, but I never had a true understanding of what it was. And the deeper and deeper and deeper that I've dug into it, not necessarily into being Jewish or into Judaism or anything like that, but just searching and wandering and exploring and having conversations, the roots of Judaism are based in a lot of mysticism and a lot of spirituality, which then connects everything else. And that's why
everything else, like everything,
literally everything else. And that is what is so fascinating and so interesting. And I got a book about Ashkenazi herbalism. And I was like, well, this is the same shit that my Muslim friends have and that my other friends, and all of these pieces just start to come together. And I think that's what I find so beautiful about the circle of people that I have in my life, is that you and I can have these conversations, and you can talk about the universe, God, however you would like to talk about it. And I have the space to talk about it in the way that I want to talk about it. And it's the same thing. And that's okay.
Same thing. Mm-hmm.
And you're not mad and I'm not mad. And that's okay.
And there's a respect that comes along with it. You know what I mean? Because at those periods of time between the three holy books, between the Gospel, the Torah, and the Quran, the world was smaller. So when things are smaller, things get very isolated and concentrated. Someone said, I was watching something, and not to get off on the spiritual tick, but this was a really good perspective. The woman was saying about how, when you graduate from college and everybody has their robe and their cap and gown on, the history of that. Just something like that. I was sitting there like, I'm driving. I'm like, okay, this sounds nerdy enough. I'll listen to it. But the history of that actually mimics the Islamic thobe, because the world was coming to the Islamic community to learn theology. They were learning philosophy. They were learning algebra. So those people, when France and England would come to those places, and they would go learn and go home, they would mimic the look of a scholar, because the scholars look like that. And I'm sitting there like, wait, I think this is a little far-fetched. Come on. Like, really? And I was like, wait a second. And then they said the reason why our cap looks like that is to mimic the Quran. I was like, come on. And the tassel was the bookmark in the Quran, because when we are Muslims, we keep our Qurans at the highest part of the house to keep it elevated from anything that could be down there. But the point that I'm saying is, not to talk about Islam in that regard, but how much are we learning from each other when we're open to it?
Right.
That part made me go, it wasn't like, oh, Islam is the best. That's all perspective, right? But the guy said that if you took a picture from the planet at that time and looked down, the entire world, particularly he was talking about America, was dark. The only places that actually had light was the Islamic regions, like literal light. And I was sitting there like, so why aren't we traveling for information anymore? And that was my takeaway. I mean, I can see how I could go down the spiritual realm and be like, yeah, cool. However, being able to communicate with a person like you with your life experiences immediately adds value to my life experiences. When we openly and willingly share our lives with each other, we immediately increase the value, the competency, and the compassion of other people. That's why I love the sharing part about health, the sharing part about what wellness actually means, the different forms of therapy, from music, sound, tactile, all these, there's not one way to heal. And technically we never completely heal. So we need to disband that narrative. I'm healing. You'll never stop.
Right. It's a work in progress, friend.
Some other issue is going to unearth itself once you get to that new level. Trust. It's coming.
Truly. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, and I just think that that's where we can get better as a community. And we're already better. Sometimes we need to not make that thing seem so far out. That the better part is already there because you're listening and learning in time. And that's what makes life so beautiful. That's what makes life so beautiful. And if you ever want to question if life is really dope, look at a child. They don't care about anything except for that moment.
Truly. Truly.
When we pull those things together, we have a whole life. A well-lived one, too.
Agreed. My goodness. I could talk to you all day, but before I let you go,
Sorry for the spiels.
No,
I get in my pulpit moments.
I could do this all day. Happily. I do ask every amazing human who comes on the show 2 questions. And that is, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten? And the worst piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
Oh, this is very easy. Won't even be long-winded. No setup story for this one at all. My mama's quote that I said earlier, try it twice because you might not have been paying attention. And the other part was, you can't. And I grew up in an area that I bet. The term used to be bet money. That would just be the whole term. But that you had to have, I've learned how to get where I am in life because I always had an antagonist. And sometimes I had to create them. I really did.
The stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And I heard the best quote to say this. There's no need for Batman without the Joker. The Joker makes Batman become Batman.
Right.
Because if you don't have something that's challenging you on even your ethics, morals, and your word, you'll never grow. So the tormented one was not the Joker. The tormented one was actually Batman. Because he had to keep looking at himself.
It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. That's the hardest conversation you'll ever have. Changing your own narrative about yourself. Whew.
That's the work in progress, huh?
Yeah, thank God. Thank God, because yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Learning with Lerner and hearing the wisdom, stories, and ideas that will have you feeling inspired and ready to take on the world. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to share, rate, and review. It means the world to me and the team putting it all together. If you're looking for more information, you can find me at lindseylerner.com. That's LINDSEYLERNER.com. Or if you've got any questions or curiosity about me, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Lindsey Lerner. Thanks again for listening and have an awesome day.